December 20th, 1980, Greenhaven Correctional Facility, Stormville, New York. Frank Lucas sat in the visiting room wearing prison-issued greens. 7 years into a 15-year sentence. He was 43 years old, but looked 60. Prison ages you fast. Across the table sat his son, Ray, 17. High school senior, looking at his father with a mixture of love and disappointment. "Dad," Ray said, "I need to ask you something." Frank knew what was coming. He'd been dreading this conversation for 7 years. Ask, was it worth it? That simple question, 5 words, but it carried the weight of everything Frank had lost, everything he'd destroyed, everything he'd chosen. Frank looked at his son and knew this was the most important answer he'd ever give. To understand this moment, you need to understand what Frank Lucas's 7 years in prison had been like. When Frank entered Greenhaven in 1975, he was somebody. Frank Lucas, the man who'd revolutionized the heroin trade, the man who'd made millions, the man whose story would eventually become American Gangster. But in prison, none of that mattered. He was just another inmate. Number 80, assigned to the prison laundry, making 14 cents an hour, sleeping in a cell barely bigger than a closet. The first year was the hardest. Frank had gone from a mansion in Teaneck to a 6x8 cell, from making $1 million a week to making $7 a month, from silk suits to prison greens. He thought about suicide multiple times. What was the point of living if this was all that was left? But he had Julie, his wife. She visited every month, 3-hour drive from New Jersey, every single month, for 7 years. And he had his kids. Ray was 10 when Frank went to prison. Now he was 17, grew up visiting his father behind bars. In those 7 years, Frank had time to think, really think, about the choices he'd made, the lives he'd destroyed, the price of his ambition. He worked in the laundry, read books, stayed quiet, avoided trouble, and slowly something changed in Frank. He started to see his life differently, started to understand what he'd really done. December 20th, 1980, Ray's visit. Ray had news. He'd been accepted to several colleges, could go anywhere he wanted, but he'd been talking to some friends, some guys from the neighborhood, who were making money the fast way, and Ray was considering it. "Dad, there are opportunities, real money. I could help Mom, help the family. We're struggling, you know. While you're in here, we're barely making it." Frank's chest tightened. This was his nightmare, his son following in his footsteps. "What kind of opportunities?" Frank asked, though he already knew. "Some guys I know, they're moving product, making good money. They want me to work with them. Nothing crazy, just some deliveries. They said I could make $5 grand a month." "Dad, that's more than Mom makes in 6 months. Frank closed his eyes, took a deep breath. When he opened them, he looked his son directly in the eyes. "Ray, I'm going to tell you something, and I need you to really hear me. Can you do that?" "Yeah, Dad." Frank leaned forward. "Everything you think you know about my life is wrong. Everything you heard on the streets about how I lived, about the money, about the power, it's all a lie. But you made millions. I made millions." Frank interrupted, "And I lost it all, every penny. You know what I have now? 14 cents an hour, $7 a month. That's what all those millions got me." He gestured around the visiting room. "This is what success in that life looks like. Gray walls, steel bars, missing your kids grow up." Ray looked down at the table. "But you were somebody. People respected you." Frank laughed, bitter, hollow. "Respected? Ray, they feared me. That's not respect. And you know what? The second I got arrested, all that respect disappeared. The people I thought were loyal, they ran. The cops I paid off, they testified against me. The dealers who worked for me, they forgot my name." He paused. I was alone. The only person who stood by me was your mother. And I don't deserve her. Dad, let me finish. You asked if it was worth it. So let me answer that honestly. Frank took a breath. This was hard. Harder than anything he'd ever done. I grew up poor, North Carolina. Nothing. I came to New York thinking I was going to be somebody. Make something of myself. And for a while, I did. I made more money than I ever dreamed of. Had cars, houses, power. So it was worth it? No, Frank said firmly. Because here's what I lost. I lost 7 years of watching you grow up. I lost your sister's childhood. I lost my marriage, your mother, visits. But Ray, our marriage is over. You can't keep a marriage together through prison glass. His voice cracked. I lost my freedom. I lost my dignity. I wake up every morning in a cell. I eat when they tell me to eat. I sleep when they tell me to sleep. I'm not a man anymore. I'm a number. Ray was crying now, quiet tears running down his face. But worst of all, Frank continued, I lost myself, the man I could have been. I had intelligence, hustle, determination. I could have built a legitimate business, could have been successful the right way, but I chose the fast way, the easy way. And it cost me everything. He reached across the table, took Ray's hand. So when these guys tell you about easy money, about respect, about power, they're lying to you, just like I lied to myself. The money goes away, the respect is fake, the power is temporary, but this, he gestured to the prison around them, this is permanent. This is real. What should I do? Ray asked quietly. You go to college, you get an education, you build a legitimate life. You become someone your kids can be proud of. You become the man I should have been. But Mom needs help, the money. I'll write your mother. I have some connections still, people who owe me favors. I'll make sure she's taken care of. But Ray, you cannot. You will not follow my path. You hear me? Yes, sir. Say it. Say you won't go into that life. Ray wiped his eyes. I won't. I promise. Frank sat back, exhausted. He'd never been this honest with anyone. Not even himself. You know what the worst part is? Frank said after a moment. I thought I was smart. Thought I was playing chess while everyone else was playing checkers. Thought I was building an empire. He shook his head. But I was just destroying myself. Slowly, one choice at a time. And by the time I realized it, it was too late. It's not too late, Dad. You'll get out. You can start over. Frank smiled, sad. Ray, I'm 43 years old. I'll be 50 when I get out of here. I'll have a felony record, no money, no connections. I'll be starting from nothing. That's if I even survive in here. Don't talk like that. I'm being realistic. This is what that life gets you. And I need you to understand that. Really understand it. Because those guys who are offering you money, they're not your friends. They're predators. They see a kid from a broken home, with a father in prison, and they think you're an easy target. Ray nodded. I get it, Dad. Do you? Really? Because it's going to be tempting. You're going to see other guys making fast money, living good, and you're going to think maybe your old man was wrong. Maybe they're different. Maybe you can beat the odds. Frank leaned forward again. But you can't. Nobody beats the odds. You either end up dead or in prison. Those are the only two endings to that story. I'm one of the lucky ones because I'm still alive. But look where I am. The visiting room guard called out. 5 minutes. Frank and Ray only had 5 more minutes together. The next visit wouldn't be for another month. Ray, I need you to promise me something. And I need you to mean it. Anything, Dad. Promise me you'll be better than me. Promise me you'll learn from my mistakes instead of repeating them. Promise me you'll live a life you can be proud of. Ray was crying again. I promise. And one more thing. When you have kids someday, and you will, tell them about me. Don't lie. Don't make me sound like a hero. Tell them the truth. Tell them their grandfather was a drug dealer who threw away his life for money that didn't last and power that wasn't real. Tell them so they don't make the same mistakes. I will. That's my legacy. Not the money, not the empire, but the lesson, the warning. That's all I have left to give. The guard called again. Time's up. Ray stood. Frank stood. They hugged across the table. The guard let it go for a moment longer than usual. I love you, Dad. I love you too, son, more than you'll ever know. Now go. Go build a life worth living. Ray walked out of that prison visiting room, and Frank watched him go, watched his son leave, watched his chance at redemption walk through those doors. Frank sat back down, alone. And for the first time in 7 years he cried. Really cried. Not for himself, for the man he could have been, for the father his son deserved, for all the wasted years and foolish choices, but also, maybe for the fact that his son would be different, would be better, would learn from Frank's mistakes instead of repeating them. That was something, small, but something. Frank Lucas was released from prison in 1981. He'd served 7 years of his 15-year sentence. He came out broke. Felony record. No connections. No prospects. He worked odd jobs. Construction. Security guard. Anything he could find. Ray kept his promise. He went to college. Got a degree. Built a legitimate career. Never touched drugs. Never got in trouble. He had kids, and when they were old enough, he told them about their grandfather. The truth. No sugarcoating. No hero worship. Your grandfather was a brilliant man who made terrible choices. He could have been anything, but he chose crime, and it destroyed him. Learn from that. Be better than that. Frank died in 2019. He was 88 years old. He'd lived to see his grandchildren graduate college, see them build honest lives. At his funeral, Ray gave the eulogy. He talked about his father's mistakes, but also about that conversation in December 1980. My father's greatest gift to me wasn't money, wasn't connections. It was honesty, the brutal, painful truth about what his life had cost him. That honesty saved me. Saved my kids. And for that, I'll always be grateful. He wasn't a good man. He did terrible things. Hurt a lot of people. But in the end, he tried to make sure I didn't follow his path. And he succeeded in that. So maybe that counts for something. After the funeral, Ray found something in his father's belongings. A letter, written in 1980 but never sent. It was addressed to Ray. Son, if you're reading this, I'm gone. I hope I got to say goodbye. Hope I got to see you become the man I know you can be. I spent most of my life chasing the wrong things. Money, power, respect. And I lost everything that mattered. My freedom, my family, my soul. But that conversation we had in December 1980 when I told you the truth about my life, that was the first honest thing I'd done in 20 years. And seeing you walk away from that life, seeing you choose better, that's the only thing I ever did that I'm truly proud of. You're my redemption, not because you forgave me, but because you learned from me, because you didn't repeat my mistakes. That's all a failed man can hope for, that his failures teach the next generation. I love you. I'm sorry, and I'm proud of you. Dad. Ray keeps that letter in his office, reads it. Sometimes when he's making difficult decisions, when he's tempted to take shortcuts, when he forgets the price of compromising your principles, it reminds him success built on destruction isn't success. Money gained through pain isn't wealth. Power that requires hurting others isn't power. These are the lessons Frank Lucas learned too late for himself, but not too late for his son. And maybe that's worth something. Maybe that's the real legacy. Not the empire that crumbled, but the wisdom that survived. Frank Lucas was a criminal, a drug dealer, a man who caused immeasurable harm. But on December 20th, 1980, in a prison visiting room, he became something else, a father who told his son the truth, who sacrificed his ego for his son's future, who turned his biggest mistake into his son's biggest lesson. That doesn't excuse his crimes, doesn't make him a hero, but it proves that even deeply flawed people can do something right, can leave something valuable behind. Was it worth it? Ray's question, Frank's answer, when stripped of all the lies and rationalizations: no, it wasn't worth it, not even close. But the wisdom that came from that answer, the life Ray built, because of that honesty, the grandchildren who never followed Frank's path, maybe that was worth something after all. If this story about hard truths and second chances moved you, hit that subscribe button. Drop a like if you believe even the worst mistakes can teach valuable lessons. Comment below, what would you tell your children about your biggest regrets? Remember, success isn't about how much you gain, it's about what you leave behind. And Frank Lucas left behind a warning that saved his son's life.